Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. 2 impeachment complaints against the Vice President have survived the substance test. But will these get enough votes at the House plenary to finally send it to Senate trial?
VP Sara Duterte was busy with a complaint that did not involve her impeachment. Today, she sued Madriaga, a supposed former aide who accused her of taking money from drug lords and pogo bosses.
And the lawmaker accused of lawyering for the Vice President is sorry for an off-color remark about an actress. But in his so-called apology, Congressman Suntay still deflected and had too many qualifiers.
With that, we shall proceed to vote. The chair is now ready to hear the motion on the sufficiency in substance. Those who are in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. With 54 votes in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and 0 abstention, the chair declares the sufficiency in substance of Zabala et al. Impeachment complaint so ruled. With 54 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote in the negative, with 0 abstention, the chair declares the Cabrera impeachment complaint sufficient in substance, so ruled.
The House Committee on Justice found the remaining impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte sufficient in substance.
This allows the case to inch forward, with the VP given 10 days to file an answer to the panel's decision. Again, this is not yet a solid victory for those who want Duterte ousted.
From here, the complaints will have to hurdle a few more obstacles and pass a very critical numbers test at the lower chamber. News 5's Marian Enriquez has tonight's big story.
The House Justice Committee has found the surviving impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte sufficient in substance. The 2 complaints filed by a group led by Father Bong Saballa and that of lawyer Nathaniel Cabrera garnered an overwhelming yes vote of 54 with 0 abstention. Quezon City Representative Bong Suntay was the lone negative vote. Just like in the first ouster move against the VP, both filings mainly accused Duterte of betrayal of public trust and other violations. That's over the alleged misuse of 612.5 million pesos in confidential funds. There's also her supposed threat to kill President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Ridon connected Sara's purported squander of public funds to her unexplained increase in net worth.
And if we will base it from the original SALN at 2008 to the 2024 SALN, Madam Chair, it is an increase of more than, I think, 1,200%. So we leave it to the House Committee on Justice to make a determination on whether the comparison between the original SALN at 2008 and the current SALN at 2024 constitutes unexplained wealth, which is essentially part of the impeachable offenses that we would want to proceed with at this point.
Apart from these grounds, filers have also included the testimony of self-proclaimed Duterte bagman Ramil Madriaga in their impeachment complaints, something Congressman Suntay tried to question. But he was shut down by ML Party List Representative Leila De Lima.
So we are relying on an affidavit issued by an individual who is currently in prison. Meron ba siyang appointment kay VP Sara to prove that he is an employee or an authorized person para ma-direct na naman natin yung linkage nung dalawa?
We're not yet at the evidentiary stage. We're not yet supposed to judge whether or not Mr. Madriaga is credible.
With both impeachment complaints now past the House Committee on Justice, the Vice President was ordered to file her answer to the impeachment complaints within 10 calendar days. Her defense counsel, attorney Michael Poa, has acknowledged the House Committee's decision and said the legal team will carefully review the records of the proceedings. The Vice President's brother, Davao Congressman Pauline Duterte, in a statement said the House panel's vote did not come as a surprise, as it exposed how certain forces in the lower chamber have weaponized impeachment for political ends. He also commended Congressman Suntay for his lone opposition. His parting shot for the 54 who voted in favor of the complaints: political power is temporary, and that history has a way of judging those who abuse their authority. House Justice Panel Chairperson Jervil Luistro meanwhile clarified that finding the two remaining complaints sufficient in substance is not tantamount to declaring the Vice President guilty of impeachable offenses.
Do the allegations rise to the level of impeachable offenses? Do these complaints meet the constitutional threshold to move forward? And importantly, are the allegations credible enough to justify moving forward with the process? At this stage, we are not deciding guilt.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
The lone opposition to Duterte's impeachment complaint has issued what he feels is an apology. Quezon City 4th District Congressman Bong Suntay says he is sorry for his remark involving Ann Curtis. Suntay, who drew much criticism for what many found as sexist comments about the actress, admitted that his choice of example was inappropriate. But the lawmaker still does not regret his statements.
While may mga tao siguro that found the analogy in bad taste, doon sa mga na-offend, tayo'y inuulit ko, walang malis doon sa nanais nating gawin doon sa statement na yun. Ayaw natin makasakit through that analogy, but kung may nasaktan, humihingi tayo ng dispensa. Kay Miss Ann Curtis rin, kung nasaktan siya sa sinabi, ulitin ko, there was no malice intended at tayo humihingi ng dispensa sa kanya. Hindi tayo perfectong tao. Kung maling analogy, hindi nagustuhan ng iba, well, sorry doon sa mga hindi nakagusto. But actually, in fact, that analogy was effective dahil hindi nyo ako papansinin kung hindi binigay yung analogy na yun.
Suntay came under fire from several personalities, including Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte and Sister Jasmine Curtis, actress Nadine Lustre, and many others who want the congressman reprimanded. Even Palace Press Officer Claire Castro found Suntay's off-color comment offensive.
Dapat ba bang ipagpasalamat na ang lalaki ay nag-iisip ng malaswa sa iyong pagkababae? Magkaiba ba yun? Kung ordinaryong tao ang gagawa o ang tao ay supposed to be isang honorable?
For our first guest tonight, we have on the program Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Diokno. Good evening, Congressman. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Seth. Good evening, Shawn, and everyone watching or listening.
First of all, let's touch on the so-called apology of Congressman Suntay. Won't there be any move in Congress to refer his statements to the Ethics Committee for investigation?
I understand that there may be some moves in that direction, but I am not privy to any, I don't have any direct knowledge if any complaints have in fact been filed.
All right, now let's go to the impeachment complaints which passed the test of substance. What are the next steps?
Well, the committee will be sending the directive to the Vice President to submit an answer within an unextendable period of 10 days. If the Vice President does file an answer, the complainants in both impeachment complaints will have 3 days to file a reply. If they do so, then the Vice President will have a period of 3 days as well to file a rejoinder. which is an answer to the reply.
She may waive her right to appear before the committee, but what would be your own sense?
Well, that would really be up to her. The rules provide that if she does not submit an answer, there will still be a next stage, which will be the presentation of evidence. And after which the committee will be able to then make its determination whether there is enough grounds to bring this to the plenary and to proceed with the impeachment case.
In the
To me,
presentation...
this is,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, this is the most important stage, I believe, in the House of Representatives when it comes to impeachment. Dito po natin susuriin ang ebidensya. Dito malalaman ng mga miyembro ng committee kung talagang may sapat na basihan ang mga alegasyon laban kay Vice President Duterte.
Kasama na po ba dito ang pagbukas ng kanyang bank accounts? May dahilan po ba na maibibigay sa komite para kumuha ng mag-issue ng subpoena duces tecum, for instance?
May mga alegasyon na napapaloob sa parehong complaints, yung third and fourth complaints tungkol sa unexplained wealth, tungkol sa mga bank accounts and in relation to the salins of the Vice President. So there is a basis for that, yes.
And will you move for that?
That remains to be seen. I don't want to prematurely announce any measures that may be taken. Siguro mas maganda kung abangan natin ang mga susunod na kabanata.
Okay. Mabilis na nangyari, Congressman, ang mga hearing ng committee tungkol sa form and substance of the impeachment complaints. Were you surprised at the pace?
No, the chair of the committee, and I must commend her for her handling of the proceedings, is under time, is under the gun when it comes to time because ang binibigay ng ating konstitusyon ay 60 days.
60 days.
To come, not only to do all the presentation of evidence, but to come up with the report and the resolution, bring it to plenary. And that, given the number of, the fact that we're going to go on recess at the end of March, and then adjourn also in May, that really imposes a lot of pressure on the committee to finish its work before then.
Congressman Diokno, I was just wondering kung nagulat kayo sa naging resulta ng botohan. As we know, Congressman Suntay was the lone one who voted no. No abstentions, everyone else voted yes. Was that what you expected?
Well, we have to remember that last year, pretty much the same, based on the same complaint, more than 1/3 of the members of the House approved it and filed the articles, the verified complaints, which later became the articles of impeachment. So I don't think it should come as a surprise.
And that's my next question. Actually, do you think the plenary, that you'll get the same support from the plenary when it comes to a vote finally?
If the vote earlier today was any indication, where there was only one negative vote, no abstentions, and completely all the members of the committee voted in favor of form and of substance, then that will be a good sign as far as what may happen in the plenary. But I have to stress this, that it will all really depend on what evidence comes out in that stage of the proceedings before the Committee on Justice. And in nga yung bagay na matagal nang iniintay ng taong bayan. Actually, last year, talagang everyone was eager to get to that stage when, if you recall, when the articles were transmitted to the Senate. Yun lang, naantala at dumating na doon sa punto na hindi na nga natuloy yung impeachment last year. So this is now the time for the committee to assess the evidence and to see whether there is enough evidence to hold a high official like the Vice President accountable.
Well, the basis also of the question of Shawn, I believe, was because there were concerns that with the vice president's early declaration that she would run for the presidency, that declaration may affect the appetite of congressmen to support the impeachment complaint.
I don't think it makes a difference because whether or not the vice president had made a formal declaration, she has not kept her plans of running hidden. It's very apparent, I believe, to everyone, and even to the members of Congress. So palagi ko, hindi wala naman nagkaiba sa kanyang formal na deklarasyon.
And Kong, also today, Vice President Sara Duterte filed a case against Ramil Madriaga. Yun po yung, kumbaga, yung bagong factor in this year's impeachment complaints, the Madriaga affidavit. Do you think in any way makakaapekto ito sa galaw or sa takbo ng impeachment?
It's no surprise that that was done by her camp. I don't think that will affect the assessment of evidence kasi pag humarap si Madriaga sa amin, sa committee, kami na mismo ang mag-a-assess kung nagsasabi ba siya ng katotohanan o hindi. And the rules provide that we can cross-examine any witness who comes forward. And of course, as you know, the purpose of a cross-examination is precisely that, to find out kung talaga may laman yung sinasabi at kung nagsasabi siya ng katotohanan.
Now, if we may shift topics to the anti-political dynasty bill at the House and withdrawal of the minority support from what you perceive as a watered-down version. What can you say about this?
We were quite surprised at the process that unfolded during the hearing yesterday morning because we felt that it was not those were not the usual and appropriate steps that should be taken, especially in a bill as important as the anti-political dynasty bill. Kaya ang naging pasya namin ay kung ganyan lang ang mangyayari, ay hindi namin, wag na. Because if from where we're coming from, the bill we filed calls for a fourth degree of affinity or consanguinity prohibition. To where they're going, in terms of what was adopted by the Committee on Suffrage, ay sobrang malayo. You know, of course, there's got to be a middle ground somewhere, and we're willing to find that middle ground. Pero it has to be reasonable naman.
Congresswoman Janet Garin said, of course, to be realistic, some compromises should be made. But for you guys, is this like too much of a compromise on your end?
Yes, given the contents of what was adopted by the committee.
Do you still have confidence that this will pass? Of course, the Senate was also deliberating, so I'm sure you tuned in to at least some of the finer points of their deliberations, Congressman.
Yes, we are very acutely monitoring what's happening in the Senate, and that's going to be a big factor as well in terms of what kind of middle ground can be reached in the House. I just hope that all sides, all the proponents of the bills in the House are willing to really find a reasonable middle ground.
And what is that for you?
It's very hard. I don't want to show my cards at this point. This is something that will be subject of a lot of negotiation, and that will depend on what positions are taken in the coming days and weeks. Where everyone knows what the bill that we filed is there. It's about the broadest bill on anti-political dynasty. But at the same time, we are realistic and pragmatic enough to be open to finding a middle ground.
Okay, but generally speaking, Congressman, are you guys willing to settle or better ba na wag na lang at ipagpaliban na lang natin kung hindi talaga amenable doon sa final version ng bill?
Well, kung ganito lang ang mangyayari, ang tingin namin ay imbis na maging anti-political dynasty yung bill kung sakaling magiging batas siya,
Mas lalo.
It will in effect legitimize political dynasty. And that's exactly the situation we want to avoid.
Parang Trojan horse itong bill na nangyari.
Ay, hindi galing sa akin yan, ha? That's your words.
Para daw kasi nagiging pro or protective of political dynasties instead of the opposite.
Anti-political dynasty bill, which legitimizes, isn't that a Trojan horse? But anyway, Congressman, tila sa focus ng media and Congress sa impeachment complaints laban sa Vice President, medyo nakakaligtaan na ba ang flood control scandal?
Hindi naman. Sa tingin ko, in fact, I'm one of those who believes that we should continue with an investigation into that. Kasi ang laki ng epekto niyan, pag inisip natin yung nangyari dyan sa flood control, hindi lang naman flood control yan eh. It reflects a big defect in the system kung pati yung budget process ay ginagawa ng gatasan. If you recall, based on the testimonies of some of the witnesses from the DPWH, yung mga commission quote-unquote nila ay depende sa stage ng budget. I mean, that really shows that a total, they really murdered the budget and used it not for the purposes of development for the people, but rather for their own enrichment. And that system must change. We must discard that and bring it back to its original purpose.
The
reason why we
minority,
have a budget process is precisely so that we can uplift the lives of ordinary Filipinos. Hindi na nang nangyari.
Congressman, the minority was pushing for the legislation of this measure that would create the independent commission, give it more teeth. Whatever happened to that measure?
Your question
AIC.
Yes. I was one of those who filed the Independent Commission Against Infrastructure Corruption bill together with Congresswoman Laila De Lima and other members of the Reform Bloc. We are ourselves in a quandary as to why it is not moving in the House when it is part of the LEDAC and it's a priority of no less than the President. And every single opportunity we have, pina-follow up po namin yan sa House leadership. Pero hanggang ngayon, pinagpapasapasahan at kung hindi dinidribble, pinagpapasapasahan. More than what's happening in a basketball game.
Can you go into more detail, Congressman Diok, para rin matulungan namin kayong habulin, kung ano na nagyayari dito sa bill creating the ICAIC. Paano po yung pasapasahan?
Deadma sila.
No, ganito ang nangyari ha.
Sige.
As early as, let me recall the exact time periods, as early as before the Christmas break.
Yes.
Natapos na yan sa committee. We worked on that. I was part of the technical working group. We came out with the report. It was supposed to go to the Committee on Appropriations, which is the only purpose of that is so that to ensure that there is sufficient appropriations for the bill. And we kept following it up, but apparently it was only taken up recently, based on what I was told. And I was also informed that it's somehow going back to review by a committee, and I am myself trying to find clarification kung ano ba ang nangyari. Kasi imbis na umusad siyang forward, ay parang it's going backward. And
So,
I don't think that's acceptable.
So is it the Committee on Rules? Ano po ba hindi siya naka-calendar for plenary? Because
Yes.
na-report
As
out
of
na ng
now,
committee.
hindi pa siya naka-calendar for plenary.
Okay. So, the next question is, ito ba, is the administration just, parang pogi points lang ba ito na, it's part of the LEDAC, it's certified as urgent, and then wala. Parang performance lang.
Baka naman magandang maitanong sa Malacanang. Considering na wala ngang nangyayari sa bill, kami House Bill 445C and the consolidated version, ano ang panawagan nila sa House leadership?
Yeah.
I'm a member of the minority, so I'm not privy to what's happening in the majority. But
Yeah.
of course, the president and the members of his department can easily call on
Yeah.
and find out what's happening and ask them to move it as quickly as possible.
In the same vein, if the president is serious also, because he did say that he wanted Congress to pass an anti-dynasty measure, then itulak din niya.
Yes. In fact, ang panawagan namin noon pa ay i-certify na niya as urgent para talagang
hindi pa ba?
to send the message. And not just to say that it's a priority, but to certify it formally as urgent.
Okay, balikan ko lang very briefly yung ICAIC. So ngayon nasa APRO committee ulit, no, yung bola. Like you said, Congressman Jokno, pero in your opinion, yung galaw kasi ng kaso, and I know you're a lawyer, so you're maybe familiar with the more realistic and slower timeline, no, than those observing. Do you think yung andar ng mga kaso ay mabilis-bilis naman, comparatively speaking?
You mean you're referring to comparing this to a court
The
case?
flood control cases po.
Well, in the first place, I am not privy to what is the stage of those cases. I'm basing it only on the reports I've seen in the news na supposedly may mga na-file. Hindi ko rin alam kung tapos na yung preliminary investigation. So far, I'm not aware of any cases that have actually been filed in court, unless you have heard anything that I haven't heard. But that's precisely why we were calling and we continue to call for an ICAIC, because an independent commission with teeth created by Congress can do the right coordination to ensure that the cases are filed as quickly as possible and the cases have the evidence needed to secure a conviction. So yun, at the end of the day, yun naman ang hinahanap natin eh. Na magkaroon ng accountability. So many cases of corruption have been exposed over how many years, but number one, they take very, very long, and sometimes at the end of 10 years or 20 years, wala rin naman nangyayari at na-absuelto yung mga akusado. That's why I have another call, which is that I truly believe that the Supreme Court should impose a very strict time limit on corruption cases. Because corruption cases, ang biktima ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Why is it that corruption cases in our country can last up to 10, 20, or even 30 years? That betrays justice. It really is an aberration that we should not, that's totally unacceptable. Any corruption case should not take longer than 3 years in trial and 2 years on appeal. Unfortunately, when the Sandigan Bayan and the courts appeared before us in the last budget cycle, I found out from the data they gave us that there are corruption cases that have been pending in the Sandigan Bayan for 10, 20, 30, and even up to 38 years. That is really unacceptable. If we're serious about accountability, hindi dapat mangyari yan.
And what do you want the Supreme Court to be doing?
I believe that they have the power to instruct the lower courts, especially the Sandigan Bayan, that beginning now, all corruption cases, especially the flood control and others involving huge amounts of money, be finished, the trial within 3 years and appeal within 2 years. Because any case that lasts more than 5 years, ang daming pwedeng mangyari. The witnesses can change their minds, they can go abroad, they can be influenced or intimidated, the prosecutors might lose interest. If the appeal takes forever, then even the people will forget about the case.
Well, we thank you for your time. That was a wide-ranging discussion on various issues. Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Jokno.
And we are just pausing for a quick break, but still to come. Could the prices of diesel and gasoline skyrocket to 90 pesos per liter if the Middle East crisis deepens? The Energy Department is not ruling out that possibility just yet. That story and more when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back to the big story. Will pump prices reach as much as 90 pesos per liter because of tensions in the Middle East? Authorities are not discounting the possibility. Back in June 2022, diesel and gasoline went for that price when the war between Russia and the Ukraine broke out. The Philippines imports oil from Russia at 8 million barrels, a drop in the bucket compared to fuel we get from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Kuwait. All these nations transport their oil through the Strait of Hormuz, which is now virtually impassable due to the war.
We can only look back at our experience ng kaparehong sitwasyon. So, hindi humalayo na mag-i-increase. At nakita na natin nga yun nung June 2022. Na yun ang medyo mataas peak price yun ng epekto ng March na sinimulang gulo doon sa Ukraine and Russia.
To cushion the blow on those who drive for a living, the Energy Department is preparing to distribute fuel subsidies. But this sector remains worried.
Wala nang kinikita dahil napupunta sa diesel.
Ang naiuwi na lang po namin noon, 200 na lang po isang araw. Sa sobrang mahal po ng diesel.
The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, is calling on drivers and operators to prepare their subsidy cards. And while that aid is yet to come, the Energy Department appeals for austerity measures on fuel consumption.
Talaga namang required na ang ating pamahalaan na maging mas energy efficient. Madaming nangyayari ngayon na development sa pangdaigdigan. Ang pinakahawak at magagawa ng ating mga kababayan, kagaya rin sa pamahalaan, ay mas maging masinop dun sa paggamit ng mga existing resources natin.
In other news, the Senate panel on ethics and privileges is set to begin vetting ethics complaints against 6 incumbent senators on March 18. That is according to committee chair Senator J.V. Ejercito, following the committee's second meeting today held behind closed doors. Ejercito said the panel cannot act on any complaint until the rules are formally adopted and published. He added that 5 days after publication, the members may begin reviewing copies of the filed complaints.
We will vet first kung ano yung talagang according to rules, no, nasa according to form. Kasi baka ma-technical yung iba no? Then kung in case, we will tell the complainants na ayusin nyo. If you would decide so to refile, kung sakasakali, and then we will also, the committee will review nga kung ano talaga yung may grounds, no? So, pag-aaralan naman namin lahat yan Siguro we'll take it one case at a time or two at a time kung depende, no? But now we have already given all the information on the cases and the nature of the cases.
So far, 6 ethics complaints have been filed against senators, including one involving Ejercito himself, as well as Senator Bato de la Rosa. Ejercito declined to name the other senators facing raps, saying the panel will only disclose details once sufficient grounds are found.
It will be unfair kung mga frivolous po yung mga complaints, di ba, or allegations, tapos pagpipiestahan na sila, no? Pagpipiesta na kami, that includes me, in media, social media, and by the public. So far, I think it will be executive session kasi it will be unfair naman kung halimbawa, I hope that the public will understand that in case it will be dismissed, pero di ba? Damage would have been done already kahit na in the end kung ma-dismiss man yung kaso pero napagpiestahan na.
Senator Ejercito likewise said that once vetting begins, the Ethics Committee will determine whether the complaints meet formal requirements and have sufficient grounds. And if they do, only then will the cases move forward.
Definitely, they will be may preliminary investigation. Then they will be given the chance to respond, no, to respond to the allegations, to the complaints. So may time yun no, na ano sila, parang a few 10 days after. Kung may sufficient grounds, then they can appear the committee also and face a complainant. Well, pag talagang malala, siguro suspension or Kung malalang malala, din expulsion. The committee will, the ethics committee will just recommend. Again, it will be the body who will decide as a whole.
At this point, we check the other stories making headlines this midweek, starting with the Philippines and the Republic of Korea signing 10 agreements. The deals were sealed during a meeting between President Bongbong Marcos and his South Korean counterpart Lee Jae-myung. The agreements cover defense procurement, veterans affairs, agriculture, trade and investment, digital cooperation, education, culture, and police collaboration.
Meantime, foreign ministers of the Association of Asian Nations, or ASEAN, have expressed serious concern over the rapidly escalating conflict in the Middle East. In a joint statement, ASEAN urged all parties to respect international law and the United Nations Charter and warned that the situation poses a grave threat to civilians and global stability. The regional bloc also called for an immediate cessation of hostilities and maximum self-restraint. The exchange of attacks between Iran and the joint forces of the U.S. and Israel has already left hundreds dead, raising fears of a wider regional war.
Back here at home, Miralco Chairman and CEO Manny Pangilinan says the power distributor is reviewing its fuel position as Middle East tensions could drive electricity prices higher. Pangilinan said Meralco is working to keep power supply stable to help shield consumers from possible price hikes. He also urged the public to conserve electricity, warning that the Philippines imports much of the fuel used for power generation.
And in other news, Grab Philippines has responded to a Nikkei Asia article alleging that they charged riders over 230% interest for in-app loans. The article claims that the rate is about 5.5 times higher than the maximum charged by credit card companies. In a statement, Grab said, before any loan is taken, partners are clearly shown the amount that they will repay as well as the repayment schedule. The company also pointed out that it does not charge for late payment fees and that these are short-term microloans with fixed repayment amounts. However, Grab did not dispute the interest rates cited in the Nikkei report, where the author says the daily repayment rates are much higher than advertised.
Meanwhile, President Bongbong Marcos is yet to ask Congress for emergency powers to reduce the fuel excise tax. But Senator Win Gatchalian is warning against such a move. Let's ask him about this concern. Welcome back to the Big Story, Senate Committee on Finance Chair Win Gatchalian. Good evening.
Good evening, Sas. Good evening, Shawn. Can you hear me?
Yes, very
All right.
loud and clear, Senator. How
Okay.
dependent is the government on excise tax on oil?
Well, the total collection of excise tax is about 300 billion a year, half of which come from petroleum, about 159 billion. So it's a very hefty amount. It's a big amount, and that's why the suspension of the excise tax should be the last resort. We should use the other mechanisms such as the Pantawid Pasada, the other subsidies, so that those subsidies are targeted and the intended beneficiaries will feel them right away.
And you did mention that reduction of the tax may only benefit vehicle owners.
Well, it's an inequitable mechanism because those who have big cars, for example, if you have cars that are, let's say, eight-cylinder vehicle, or you have many cars, then you will benefit from that reduction or that suspension of excise tax. But if you take the public transportation, you don't enjoy that. So it's an inequitable mechanism to suspend the excise tax.
There has to be a better way. What is your own proposal?
Well, the best way is targeted, meaning those who need it should get subsidies. For example, the public utility vehicle drivers, the jeepney drivers, the bus drivers, tricycle drivers, because they're squeezed in between it. When prices of oil goes up, they cannot immediately raise fare to the commuters.
Yes.
So they're squeezed in between. So in the meantime that they are being squeezed, subsidies should be given to them directly so that it can compensate for that inability to raise fares.
But I understand that logistically this is difficult. And in fact, during the war between Russia and the Ukraine, when
Yes.
the outbreak of that war, there were difficulties in how to allocate, how to distribute these cards, etc.
Actually, it says katamaran na lang yan eh. I don't think it's difficult.
Tama naman.
Tinatamad lang yung mga people in DOTR because they're the ones who should give this. We've been doing this for the last 20 years. We've been giving subsidies to jeepney drivers and bus drivers for many, many years already. And we all know that we're susceptible to price fluctuations because we import 95% of our oil. So every year we would put 2 billion, 3 billion to Pantawid Pasada. So in other words, it's not something new. We've been doing that for many, many years, and this should have been perfected by this time.
Okay. You mentioned Pantawid Pasada and the contingent fund in previous interviews kasi nga hindi po kayo pabor no natanggalin yung excise tax, Senator. But as far as you know, because we also just kind of finished the budget cycle, is there enough programmed appropriation into the President's contingent fund as well as Pantawid Pasada, which I believe is at 2 billion?
Yeah. The Pantawid Pasada right now, we have approximately about 2 billion pesos. The complication with Pantawid Pasada, it has a strike price of $80 on average for the last 30 days. So meaning you have to wait for 30 days and the prices should be elevated at $80 before you can use the Pantawid Pasada. And that formula is quite inefficient because you're trying to absorb the immediate increase in petroleum. So temporarily, what I propose is for the president to use his contingency fund, and that's about approximately 14 billion pesos. So, and that doesn't have any restriction. So the president can already disperse that tomorrow if he wants.
So no need for emergency powers in that case.
Emergency powers will come in. Well, actually, it's not an emergency power per se, but the authorization to suspend excise tax. I'm not very sure what are the other features of that emergency powers, but simply put, it's giving the president the authority to suspend excise tax in case the prices of oil remains elevated for a very long time.
Meaning there are ways and means for the administration to move, to react without waiting for Congress to pass a measure.
Correct. That's in the form of subsidies. Because all tax measures should have authorization from Congress. That's why if the president wants to suspend excise tax, then he has to wait for Congress approval and authorization. That takes time. That's why I'm also, if the forecast, if the analysts and our experts in foreign relations and also this type of aberrations will say that this might take a long time to end and it may get protracted, then I think it's good to give the president the standby authorization to suspend excise tax in case this war gets protracted.
You mentioned, of course, no, na yung trigger nung Pantawid Pasada is that the price of oil has to be at $80 a barrel for 30 days. But is there any way that Congress can also shorten that? Or
yes, we can actually. We also need to amend the law. And that's the thing. The amendment of the law takes time. No? So I'm thinking of something that the president can tap into in the budget that can be released immediately, and that's the contingency fund.
some suggest also to just remove the VAT instead of the excise tax because the excise tax is also, taxed VAT. Would that be amenable or also no?
Actually, excise tax is the biggest part because that's 10 pesos per liter. VAT is on top of that, and that's approximately around 1 peso and 20 centavos. So excise tax is really the bigger portion of the tax take of the government. The complication with VAT is you have input VAT and output VAT. So if you remove VAT, that complicates the entire VAT system. Unlike excise tax, it's at the end of the product.
What about other measures that the government can also undertake to reduce consumption?
That's a very good suggestion, Ces, because I see a lot of interest now, but this is long term. I see a lot of interest now with e-vehicles. A lot of people are encouraged to buy e-vehicles. In fact, those owners of e-vehicles right now are sitting comfortably because they're not being affected by the fluctuations of oil. So moving forward and maybe medium to long term, we should really encourage the transition to e-vehicles.
Also, there is a suggestion of a reduction in work days. There could be a work from home back in the day when we were hit by a pandemic.
Correct. We can also encourage alternative working arrangement like work from home or 4-day work week. Just make sure that the people don't go to the mall or go outside when they if we implement 4-day work week. But then the tendency of people is they stay at home and they just work at home. So that will also reduce mobility outside of our homes.
Okay, well, another suggestion, of course, this was brought up by Energy Secretary Sharon Garin. She said she has spoken to the oil companies if they could stagger the increases. But I was wondering, you were also in the Energy Committee, Senator. You're familiar with the math. Would they be amenable, or is there a way that we could incentivize them to lower maybe the prices or at least something?
These are the times that DOE needs to be like a hawk and needs to be on monitoring the inventory levels and also the shipment movements of the oil companies, because they have to have inventory and those inventories should not be sold at a higher price. So we have to make sure that oil companies are not profiteering from this this event. So it's important that DOE monitors the movement and the inventory levels of oil companies. Because oil companies should have at least, I think, 30 days of inventory in their storage. Having said that, of course, this is an appeal to oil companies that don't increase your prices right away. Instead, you can stagger it. But it's an appeal. There's no law that will force the oil companies to increase the prices on a staggered basis.
And because this has come up, have you guys maybe discussed kahit na nothing very official about maybe revisiting the deregulation of the oil industry?
There's a lot of effort to, or a lot of ideas to revisit that. The concept is government should have eyes in the pricing of oil inventories, meaning because right now everything's deregulated, so government can see the inventory levels, but it cannot see the prices because the prices are proprietary in nature. But there are also moves that government should also see the prices or look at the prices because because oil companies might take advantage in situations like this. So government should know how much the oil companies bought the oil and how much are stored in the inventory.
But don't you think there's enough competition to keep everyone on their toes, or does one company have the monopoly or a higher market share?
Well, the last the last statistic that I saw, 60% is still controlled by the big three oil companies. So that's a lot of market power. So having said that, government, and then the 40% is spread over the little oil companies. So having said that, government in a situation like this, because this is a unique aberration because this event in the Gulf is affecting the entire world, and it's not only pricing but also supply. So we might have a problem in getting oil supply. So in cases like this, the DOE should have the power to look at the inventory levels, the shipping schedules, even pricing, so that oil companies will not take advantage of this situation.
So in closing, what can the Senate do, for instance? What measure are you looking at to help alleviate the situation?
Yeah. Well, in the short term, the Senate is prepared to to some of the senators that I talked to, is prepared to authorize the president to suspend excise tax in case the war gets protracted, in case that pricing of oil remains elevated for a very long time. Of course, we have to debate on how long that elevation is. At the same time, if we need to increase the budget for Pantawid Pasada, we're also looking at probably a supplemental budget to augment the Pantawid Pasada.
All right, we thank you for talking to us here on The Big Story, Senator Win Gatchalian. Now you're still watching the big news, or the big story here on One News. The big news is the war in the Middle East. Mom's the word for Vice President Sara Duterte as her impeachment complaints advance at the House of Representatives. She was busy with another complaint, one she filed against an alleged former aide. Details next. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Big Story. Vice President Sara Duterte personally went to the Taguig Regional Trial Court today. That's to file a perjury complaint against her alleged bagman, Ramil Madriaga. In her affidavit, Duterte dismissed as false Madriaga's accusations he received on behalf of the VP campaign funds from drug and pogo syndicates. The vice president also denied knowing Madriaga, insisting all his allegations are politically motivated. Vice President Sara brought with her to the Taguig RTC 5 witnesses and certifications from the Office of the Vice President, the Department of Education, and the Vice Presidential Security Group. The certification said Madriaga was never part of these agencies. According to Duterte's lawyer, they would have filed a complaint back in January but had been swamped by work.
It shows that the complainants and those pushing for the impeachment did not fact check or did a background check on Madriaga and his claims, and that's why they claim that his testimony is the smoking gun, quote unquote, for the impeachment against VP Sara.
In a statement, Madriaga said that everything in his affidavit drafted back in November of 2025 was true and done in good faith. Recall that all 4 impeachment complaints filed against VP Sara used Madriaga's affidavit as evidence. Justice Committee members do not see Duterte's complaint affecting Madriaga's testimony.
Kung ang status po ni Mr. Madriaga ay confidential informant within yung sinasabi niya kung context of use of confidential funds. So, ibig sabihin, hindi talaga siya maging empleyado, kundi ang estado niya ay confidential informant.
Meantime, the Vice President was asked today about her impeachment complaints advancing at the House of Representatives. She only had this to say.
Marami akong ginagawa sa trabaho hindi yan yung prioridad ngayon ng Office of the Vice President.
Right. That's it for The Big Story on this midweek. See you again tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Have a good night.